Rain has a way of changing the world. Streets that are familiar in daylight become foreign under the downpour. Shadows deepen, corners vanish, and every sound is swallowed by the hiss of water on pavement. Alone at night, surrounded by that curtain of noise, the human mind begins to fracture. What is real and what is imagined? The rain does not answer. It only falls, heavy and endless, hiding what waits beyond the reach of the headlights. The first thing you notice is silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of absence. The world disappears beneath the storm. Your tires slice across wet asphalt. The wipers beat frantically across the glass, and yet outside the cone of your headlights there is nothing. No houses, no voices, no movement. Only blackness thickened by rain. It feels as if the storm has emptied the earth and left you to travel it alone. But then something changes. The light catches a shape. At first it is nothing more than an outline in the distance, blurred by water. You blink and it seems to vanish, only to reappear a moment later, closer than before. The road stretches endless and empty. Yet the shape remains, as though waiting. Some swear it stands still until you draw near, then drifts slowly toward the center of the road. Others say it does not move at all, and yet somehow is suddenly right before you. The rain covers its features, leaving only the impression of someone there, drenched and unmoving. There are those who swear they saw eyes in that moment, not bright, not glowing, but pale, reflecting the headlights just enough to be visible before the figure slipped out of sight. Drivers pressed their horns, some swerved, others braked hard. When they climbed from their cars in the torrent, they found only rain striking the road, washing everything clean. No footprints in the mud, no broken grass, no one at all. The most unsettling detail is always the same. The figure should not have been there. These stretches of road pass through miles of nothing. Fields drowned in water, forests without paths, ditches filled with weeds. No houses nearby, no shelter, no reason for anyone to stand in the storm, and yet the figure remains part of every story, reappearing across years, across drivers who never spoke to each other, always the same blurred silhouette in the downpour. One truck driver described seeing a woman on the shoulder of the road, her hair plastered against her face by the rain. He slowed, thinking she was stranded, but as he drew closer, he saw that her eyes did not move. Her mouth did not open. Her body did not shiver against the cold. She simply stood, arms at her sides, staring at the road as though waiting for him to pass. He pressed the accelerator and kept driving. In his rearview mirror, she remained perfectly visible, standing in the center of his taillights until the curve of the road carried her out of sight. When he stopped at the next town, he could not make himself sleep. He swore he still heard water dripping somewhere in his empty motel room. Another driver reported picking up what he thought was a hitchhiker, a young man walking through the rain, clothes soaked, his expression hollow. He let him into the car, gave him a jacket, and asked where he was headed. The man never answered. He sat silent, staring forward, droplets of water collecting on the seat beneath him. When the driver glanced away for only a moment, the passenger seat was empty. The jacket lay folded neatly on the fabric, completely dry. The driver swore his car smelled faintly of wet soil for weeks afterward. Stories like these spread not through newspapers or reports, but through whispers. Travelers warn each other quietly, saying storms have ways of showing things better left unseen. They talk of rain that distorts not only the road but also the line between the living and the dead. Each story ends the same way, with the driver leaving the scene shaken, unable to explain what they saw, and unwilling to ever drive that road in a storm again. The question is not whether people have seen something. Enough accounts have been told, overlapping across decades, that disbelief itself begins to feel thin. The question is what they encountered. Was it a trick of the storm? Exhaustion carving hallucinations into the edges of vision? Or was it something else entirely? Something that does not belong on the road but waits there again and again to be seen. Rain has a way of drowning sound, of covering footsteps, of erasing evidence. If something walked that road, the storm would leave nothing behind. If something entered your car, the water would wash away every trace. The storm hides everything except for the memory that lodges deep in the mind of those who survived it. And so, each time a new storm gathers, the question returns with the same weight, pressing against every driver alone on the road. What waits for us in the rain when the world is emptied of every sound but our own heartbeat? The road stretches far beyond the town, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through woods, farmland, and stretches of land so empty they seem to have been forgotten by time. In daylight, the road looks ordinary, just another path carrying travelers from one place to another. But when night falls, and especially when rain begins to pour, it changes. The trees bend inward, their branches reaching over the lanes like dark hands, and the sound of rain against glass drowns out everything but the steady hum of an engine. For locals, this road has always carried a certain reputation. Farmers who lived nearby told their children not to walk along it after dark. Families warned visitors to take alternate routes during storms. Even before the age of cars, when the road was little more than a dirt track for horses and wagons, people whispered of strange figures appearing in the rain. Travelers spoke of shadows that lingered too long at the edges of lantern light, or of voices carried on the wind, soft enough to be mistaken for whispers, yet strong enough to make horses shiver and refuse to move forward. Generations passed and the stories never left. The road developed a history of unease. Some said it was cursed land, a place marked by tragedies long forgotten. Others pointed to old records of accidents, carriages overturned in mud, wagons swept away by sudden floods, lone riders found lifeless by the roadside. The rain made every misfortune worse, turning soil into traps, turning visibility into blindness. Storms came suddenly, and with them came fear. When automobiles replaced carriages, the warnings did not fade. If anything, they sharpened. Cars broke down on stretches of road that seemed stable hours before. Engines died without explanation, leaving drivers stranded under the pounding rain. Flashlights failed, radios filled with static. By the time help arrived, many swore they had seen someone outside their vehicles, watching silently from the shadows. Some spoke of hands brushing against windows, too faint to leave a mark, too real to ignore. In small towns along the road, stories became part of everyday life. A truck driver would sit in a diner and tell how he saw a woman in white standing on the shoulder, drenched but upright, her face hidden by dripping hair. A young couple would whisper about the night they nearly struck a figure crossing the lanes, only to find the road completely empty when they stopped. Families who lost loved ones in accidents on that highway left flowers on the roadside, but even those tokens sometimes vanished by morning, as though the rain itself had claimed them. It was not only travelers who felt the unease. Residents near the road described nights when the storm grew unnaturally loud, the sound of rain pressing against windows so hard it drowned out every other noise. Some claimed to hear knocking at their doors during downpours, only to find nothing when they answered. Others swore they saw headlights flicker outside long after midnight, the beams sweeping across their fields, yet no cars ever passed. The emotional weight of the road became heavy over time. Families warned their children not to take late-night drives, especially when storms gathered. Schools taught their students the history of accidents there, as though it were both cautionary lesson and local folklore. The fear grew so common it no longer needed explanation. People simply knew that rain and the road together meant danger. Yet despite the warnings, people still traveled. Work forced them, errands demanded it, lives pulled them along, and so the stories multiplied. One neighbor would tell another about headlights catching something unnatural in the rain. A cousin would mention hearing a voice in the car when no one else was inside. A friend would describe the way their hands shook after seeing a figure standing on the median, unmoving as torrents of water swept across it. The context of the road is not only its history, but its isolation. It lies far from towns, without streetlights, without houses nearby. When storms come, the land floods easily and the ditches fill with rushing water. Trees creak in the wind, branches snapping and falling into the lanes. The driver is left alone, caught between the storm above and the emptiness around. In that solitude, the mind becomes vulnerable, stretched thin by fear. But those who tell their stories are certain. It was not only imagination that stalked them. Something else lives in that rain. Something that waits until the hour is late, until the road is empty, until the storm is thick enough to hide its approach. Families who lost relatives on those nights often speak of more than grief. They describe an unfinished quality to the loss, a sense that closure never came. One widow recalled how her husband phoned from his car, his voice breaking with static as he said there was someone on the road ahead. The call cut off. Hours later, the car was found empty, the headlights still burning through the rain, the driver's seat vacant. His body was never recovered. The widow left flowers year after year, but the flowers always vanished by morning. She eventually moved away, unable to live so close to the place that swallowed him. Communities living near the road treat it like a wound that never heals. They hold vigils when storms claim new victims, but they do not speak openly about what else the rain might carry. They avoid speculation, yet their eyes betray fear when someone asks too many questions. The silence itself has become part of the context, as if talking about the present's risks inviting it closer. The road's history is layered in rain. Each generation leaves behind a story of headlights cutting through sheets of water, of figures appearing where none should stand, of voices breaking through static. These stories form the backbone of the community's memory. They are not dismissed, not explained, but carried quietly, heavily, by those who still live in the shadow of the storms. And in the middle of every account lies the same reminder. Rain transforms the ordinary into something unrecognizable, something dangerous, something that does not belong. The road becomes more than asphalt. It becomes a place where the storm speaks, where silence listens, where the living cannot be sure they are alone. The mystery of the rainy road did not erupt in a single night. It unfolded slowly, piece by piece, carried forward through years of storms. At first, the stories were little more than whispers. Travelers who claimed the rain distorted their senses. Locals who said they saw figures through mist but could not explain what they were. But then the stories began to align. Different people from different years, from different towns, began describing the same details, the same haunting rhythm that seemed to return whenever water fell from the sky and darkness stretched across the asphalt. It began with stalled cars. Engines cut out on roads that had no history of mechanical failure. Families were found huddled inside their vehicles, terrified, unwilling to step into the storm. They reported seeing someone in the distance, someone standing too still for too long, watching. When the cars restarted on their own minutes later, there were no footprints in the mud, no sign that anyone had ever stood on the road. Mechanics later examined the vehicles and found nothing wrong. The next detail was the abandoned headlights. Patrol officers and farmers alike spoke of finding cars parked on the side of the road during storms, their engines off, but their lights burning through the rain. When the doors were opened, the seats were empty. Sometimes belongings remained, purses, wallets, bags, but the drivers were gone. Search parties combed the flooded fields and ditches but found no bodies. Hours later, the rain cleared, and so did the tracks. The earth gave no answer. Stranger still were the voices. A young woman called her parents one stormy night, her voice shaking as she said someone was walking along the road ahead of her car. The phone filled with static before cutting off entirely. When police found the car, the engine was still running, windshield wipers beating uselessly across dry glass. The rain had stopped, but she was nowhere to be found. Her parents said they heard something just before the call ended, a faint voice behind their daughters, speaking words too muffled to understand. Other drivers told of hearing whispers inside their cars. Not voices carried on the radio, not echoes of their own fear, but whispers from the back seat, low and deliberate. One man swore he pulled to the shoulder, opened his door and stepped into the rain, only to look back and see water dripping across the seat as if someone had been sitting there moments earlier. He drove the rest of the night without stopping, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, eyes locked on the road ahead. Reports began to follow a rhythm, a pattern too precise to ignore. A figure appears in the headlights, blurred by rain but always human in shape. Drivers slow, afraid of striking them, but the figure vanishes before they reach it. When they glance into mirrors, the shape is behind them, standing on the shoulder, visible only for a moment before fading into the storm. Some describe a pale face, others say the figure's head hangs low, as if bent beneath a weight too great to bear. A few insist they saw eyes reflecting the headlights, though none agree on what those eyes held. Emptiness, sorrow, or something far darker. By the mid-century, the stories had grown darker. Children spoke of returning home after storms and finding muddy footprints leading up to their porches, footprints too large to belong to anyone in their families. Farmers claimed to hear knocking on barn doors during downpours, only to find nothing when they opened them. Some said the rain itself carried voices, as though the drops that struck the roof and windows formed syllables, patterns that sounded like names. Each account added another layer of contradiction. If these were hallucinations, why were they so consistent? If they were trespassers or criminals, why was nothing ever stolen? If they were ghosts of crash victims, why did their appearances predate many of the accidents on record? Every explanation opened a new question, and every question carried the same weight of unease. The road itself began to change. Locals swore the trees crept closer each year, their branches stretching into the lanes, narrowing the path. Street signs tilted, some falling entirely as if even metal could not withstand the weight of the storms. When the rain poured, the white lines of the road blurred into nothing, leaving travelers disoriented, unable to tell where the asphalt ended and the shadows began. Many believed the land itself was shifting, rearranging itself beneath the storm, hiding its secrets deeper with each passing decade. The buildup of the mystery was not in one story, but in the way they connected. A driver disappears, another sees a figure, a family hears a voice, an abandoned car is found, all separate yet all the same. Every storm retells the same tale using different people, different eyes, different ears. The consistency is what makes it terrifying. The storm has no memory, and yet the road repeats itself. Those who have studied the cases try to chart the timeline. They map disappearances, strange sightings, unexplained events. The pattern is unmistakable. Always at night, always during heavy rain, always on that same stretch of road.
Yet the conclusions fall short because the evidence never holds.
Rain washes away prints, floods erase tracks, and the storm leaves nothing but memory. Memory that corrodes, memory that haunts, memory that never feels finished. To drive that road at night during a storm is to enter the pattern yourself. Headlights against blackness, wipers screaming across the windshield, silence pressing in from every side. The storm makes you feel that you are alone, yet the stories remind you that you are not. That knowledge settles into the chest like a stone, heavier with every mile. And always the question lingers. If these are only hallucinations, why do strangers across decades see the same figure? Why do families across towns hear the same voices? Why does every story begin with rain and end with silence? No one has answered. The rain falls, the road stretches, and the mystery builds itself again, waiting for the next traveler to pass through the storm. The road's legend is not carried by whispers alone. There are records, scattered, incomplete, but undeniable, that point to something more than superstition. In dusty police files and local archives, in journals left behind by drivers who lived through nights they never forgot, fragments of evidence lie waiting. They do not solve the mystery. They sharpen it. Police reports describe vehicles discovered during storms, headlights still burning, hazard lights clicking faintly against the roar of the rain, engines cold, doors unlocked. In some cases, the keys were still in the ignition. No bodies inside, no footprints outside. Officers wrote of searching the muddy shoulders only to find the earth washed smooth, as though the rain itself refused to preserve proof. They documented belongings left behind, open wallets, scattered coins, half-eaten food in wrappers, all signs of people interrupted mid-journey, as though the storm had reached inside and taken them. In one chilling case, a patrolman described approaching a car abandoned in the middle of the road. The wipers dragged uselessly across shattered glass, rain hammering the broken windshield. The seat was soaked, the interior drenched, but no driver was found. What unsettled the patrolman most was not the absence of a body, but the presence of something else. Muddy water pooled on the floorboard, rippling faintly as if stirred by something that had only recently stepped away. His report ends abruptly, the handwriting shaky with the words, "No further search recommended." Beyond official records, there are testimonies. A farmer told of walking his property line during a storm and finding a shoe pressed into the mud fresh and deep, though no one could have crossed his fields without sinking. He left it where it was. The next morning, the shoe was gone and the mud was unbroken. Another man reported driving late at night and seeing a figure illuminated in his headlights, standing on the road's shoulder. He braked hard, skidding in the rain, but when he stepped out to check, there was no one there. The only trace he found was a wet handprint on the trunk of his car, smeared as though something had touched it while he was inside. Objects have been left behind, strange and inexplicable. Travelers have reported stumbling across small piles of belongings in the rain, keys, watches, trinkets, arranged in patterns that felt deliberate, though the rain blurred their edges. One night, a deputy claimed to find a child's toy car placed carefully in the middle of the road. Its wheels clogged with mud, but its body gleaming clean, as though it had been washed by unseen hands. Experts have been asked to explain these accounts. Psychologists argue that storms alter perception, that exhaustion and stress warp memory. They point out that water distorts light, that the constant sound of rainfall can trick the mind into hearing voices. They suggest that loneliness magnifies imagination, creating figures where none exist. Yet these explanations falter when compared with the consistency of the testimonies. How can drivers separated by decades describe the same figure standing in the storm? How can voices sound identical to strangers in different years? Other specialists claim the phenomena are rooted in the environment. They speak of low-frequency sounds generated by wind and rain, vibrations that can cause feelings of dread, disorientation, and even hallucinations. They call it infrasound, the hidden noise of the earth. Perhaps they suggest the road itself hums during storms, filling travelers with the sense that something is watching them. It is a clean theory, simple, grounded, but it does not explain the missing drivers, the cars left empty, the belongings found carefully placed. Then there are the recordings. Few survive, but those that do carry an uncanny weight. One tape, taken by an amateur investigator, captured nothing for long minutes but the sound of heavy rain. Then faintly another sound emerged, breathing, slow, heavy, measured, as though someone sat in the back seat of the car. When the investigator turned to look, the tape cut into static. Another recording, made during a phone call, preserved the voice of a woman driving in a storm. Her words were clear at first. "There's someone on the road." A pause, then the sharp crash of rain against glass. Just before the call ended, another voice whispered something low, almost unintelligible, but close enough to the microphone to make her family swear it said her name. Artifacts, testimony, expert opinion. Each piece of the puzzle leaves more questions than answers. They contradict, they confuse, they overlap in ways that cannot be dismissed. And always, the storm erases the edges, leaving only fragments. The rain falls, and with it falls the truth, washed away before it can ever be held. What is left behind is suggestion. Shadows glimpsed between the drops, voices buried beneath the hiss of water, objects left where they do not belong. These fragments do not point to a conclusion. They point only to absence, an absence that grows heavier with every report, every missing driver. Every story whispered in diners and gas stations along the road. The deeper the search goes, the less sense it makes. Every explanation bends beneath the weight of contradiction. If this is only imagination, why does it leave behind objects, evidence, and recordings? If this is something real, why does it vanish the moment you try to capture it? The mystery does not resolve. It multiplies, and perhaps that is the most unsettling detail of all. The rain does not simply hide, it erases. It leaves behind just enough to be undeniable, but never enough to be understood. The evidence of the road is scattered in reports and testimony, but its true mark is not written on paper. It lives in the people who survived it, in the families who lost loved ones to it, and in the community that has carried its weight for generations. The impact is not measured in dates or numbers, but in sleepless nights, trembling hands, and silence that never fully leaves. Survivors rarely speak willingly. When they do, their voices falter, as though even retelling the memory allows the storm to seep back into their lives. One man described driving home during a late shift when he saw a figure step into the glow of his headlights. He braked hard, swerving across the slick road, heart pounding as he waited for the impact that never came. When he got out of his car, there was nothing. No body, no footprints, only the rain. He made it home, but he never drove that road again. His children said he woke often in the night, drenched in sweat, muttering that the rain was louder than it should have been. He lived the rest of his life avoiding storms, refusing even to open his windows when clouds gathered. Families of those who disappeared carry an even heavier burden. For them, the road has no closure. A husband leaves on a routine drive, calls once to say the storm is bad, then vanishes. A mother waits by the phone for a daughter who never returns. The cars are found, the belongings remain, but the people are gone. Grief lingers without resolution, turning into something darker. A widow leaves flowers on the roadside every year, but she does not believe they reach the one she lost. A brother refuses to speak of the road at all, convinced that mentioning it aloud is an invitation. They are left with questions that erode them slowly, not just about death, but about what waits in the rain that can erase someone so completely. The psychological toll spreads far beyond the victims. Whole communities along the highway live with the constant pressure of dread. They plan their lives around storms. Neighbors call each other when the sky darkens, urging everyone to stay home, to wait until morning. When thunder rolls, the roads empty. Stores close early. Schools cancel late activities. Businesses lock their doors before the rain begins. Life bends around the weather, shaped by fear of what it carries. Children grow up with that fear sewn into them from the start. Parents do not simply warn them of danger. They speak of the rain as if it were alive, capable of listening. Do not answer if someone calls your name at night, they whisper. Do not stop if you see someone standing in the storm. These rules are passed quietly without explanation, yet they are obeyed. A generation learns to associate water with voices, shadows with danger, and darkness with something that should never be confronted. By the time they are grown, the fear is instinctive, carved deep. The trauma does not remain at the edge of the road. It follows people home. Survivors speak of hearing footsteps in their houses on stormy nights, of voices muffled behind walls, of water dripping where no leak exists. Some refuse to believe the presence is confined to the road. They claim it follows, that once you see it, once you hear it, you carry it with you. One man left town entirely, abandoning his home after he swore the figure from the road appeared outside his window during a thunderstorm. Neighbors found the house empty, doors unlocked, and a puddle of rainwater collected on the living room floor. Though no roof was damaged, psychologists who studied the survivors often describe symptoms of post-traumatic stress, flashbacks, hypervigilance, nightmares. Yet even they admit the uniformity of the experiences is troubling. People who never met, who lived in different towns, report the same details, the same footsteps, the same voices, the same figure glimpsed through rain. The trauma binds them together across decades. Their fear is not imagined. It is consistent, collective, and corrosive. Paranoia spreads easily in such conditions. People second-guess every sound during storms. A knock at the door becomes a threat. A shadow at the window is not dismissed as a tree but feared as something closer. Radios crackling during heavy rain are switched off, not because they annoy, but because people cannot bear the thought of hearing a voice that should not exist. The storm becomes more than weather. It becomes a presence, a thing that people cannot separate from the possibility of loss. What makes the impact so devastating is the helplessness. The community has tried everything: patrols, prayer, rituals, silence. Nothing stops the stories from repeating. Nothing prevents another disappearance. They have no defense, no solution, only avoidance. And avoidance itself has its own cost. It isolates, it controls, it shapes lives around fear. To live near the road is to live under an invisible weight, to shape your existence around something you cannot see but cannot deny. The road has taken more than drivers. It has taken peace. Families do not gather comfortably during storms. Travelers do not enjoy long drives at night. Children do not splash in puddles with joy. The rain is not cleansing here. It is not life-giving. It is an eraser, a thief, a reminder that safety is fragile and memory can be hollowed out by silence. And in this way, the impact of the rainy road is not only physical, not only historical. It is psychological. It has entered the bones of the community, the routines of the living, the nightmares of those who survived. It has blurred the line between grief and paranoia, between mourning and fear. The tragedy is not just what the road has taken. It is what it has left behind. People hollowed, families broken, communities bound together by dread. And all of it returns every time the sky darkens and the first drops fall against the glass. The storm does not simply pass. It stays, it waits. It whispers into the minds of those who know the road too well. And once you carry it, you never put it down. When fear becomes too heavy to ignore, explanations always follow. People want reasons, no matter how fragile. They want something to hold, even if it slips through their fingers the moment they grasp it. The rainy road has been studied, analyzed, debated, but every attempt to bring clarity has only deepened the fog around it. Investigations have come and gone, leaving files that end with more questions than they began with. Authorities began with the simplest assumption: human interference. Vandals, drifters, or criminals using storms as cover. Police increased patrols, set up checkpoints, and kept detailed logs of storm nights. They expected to catch someone wandering the road, someone responsible for the stories that had spread for decades. But no one was ever caught. Patrol cars reported headlights cutting through rain to reveal figures that vanished seconds later. Officers chased shadows into flooded fields only to find emptiness. They searched for footprints, but the rain smoothed the soil clean before they could arrive. The reports became repetitive. Observed figure, pursued, no contact, no evidence. Engineers tried their own explanations. They said the road was poorly built, laid across unstable ground that shifted with water. Cracks formed, signs tilted, trees leaned closer each year. Perhaps the illusions were caused by light bending through mist and water, headlights distorting against puddles and reflective surfaces. They spoke of mirages, of reflections, of tricks of the eye, yet their theories did not explain voices carried through radios, or passengers who disappeared mid-journey, or cars left abandoned with belongings still inside. Steel and stone could warp with weather, yes, but how did that create whispers that called names through static? Psychologists entered next. Convinced the root of the mystery was inside the human mind, they argued that rain is a sensory overload, sound, sight, touch, all blurred into confusion. Loneliness on an empty road magnifies fear. Exhaustion from long drives creates hallucinations. People begin to see figures, hear voices, imagine presences. It is a natural survival mechanism, they said. The brain inventing company when solitude grows unbearable. But this too fell apart when testimonies from strangers overlapped in eerie detail. Decades apart, drivers described the same figure, the same pale eyes reflecting in headlights, the same silence pressing against their skin. Imagination could not explain the consistency. Paranormal investigators arrived quietly, drawn by the growing archive of stories. They brought cameras, recorders, instruments to measure drops in temperature and disturbances in electromagnetic fields. They stayed on the road during storms, setting up equipment inside cars parked along the shoulder. Some left with nothing but ruined gear and soaked clothing. A few left with more. One recorder picked up faint breathing, steady and unnatural, inside a locked car with no one in it. Another device captured bursts of static that, when replayed, sounded almost like words. Low, guttural, stretched syllables that resembled names. These findings never reached wider audiences. The investigators left with their tapes and their fear, unwilling to continue. Then came the theories. They circulated in whispers, in half-finished conversations over diner counters in pages of forgotten journals. Some believed the road was haunted by victims of crashes, spirits bound to the place where their lives ended. They wandered the rain, searching for the homes they never reached, drawn to the headlights of travelers who reminded them of the lives they lost. Others said it was older than that, tied to the land itself. Long before the road was paved, this land carried rituals, sacrifices, or tragedies erased from official history. The storms only revealed what was buried, echoes of grief and violence rising when water softened the boundary between past and present. A darker theory suggests the rain does not reveal but invites, that storms are not a veil but a bridge. When the rain falls heavy enough, when sound drowns the living world, something else crosses through. Not ghosts of the past, not human memories, but something nameless that wears the shape of people. Something that stands on the road because it does not know how else to enter. Something that waits for headlights because it cannot find its way without being seen. If true, then the figures in the storm are not echoes at all. They are intrusions. Conspiratorial whispers run deeper still. Some locals claim officials know more than they admit. Why else would so many files end abruptly? Why else would outside investigators leave with no public reports? They believe the town conceals the truth because the truth is too heavy. That the road itself has become a place where boundaries thin, and acknowledging it would mean admitting safety is a lie. A few insist the road is watched even now, that hidden cameras track storms, that patrols linger just out of sight. But if surveillance exists, it has never prevented disappearances. Every theory stumbles in the same way. Each carries a piece of the puzzle, but none can hold the whole. Criminals cannot explain vanishing passengers. Psychology cannot explain consistent sightings. Paranormal studies cannot prove what they capture. Conspiracies cannot justify silence without raising more suspicion. The truth bends, fragments, slips away like water on glass, and still the storms come. Each one renews the cycle. Cars found empty, figures glimpsed in headlights, voices carried through static. Investigations close, but the mystery remains. Theories are traded, but fear endures. Nothing resolves. Nothing changes. Perhaps the road itself resists explanation. Perhaps it thrives on contradiction, on the human need to understand colliding with the impossibility of doing so. It gives just enough evidence to be undeniable, then erases itself with the rain. It leaves people chasing shadows, and in that chase it grows stronger. Theories multiply, investigations end, but the silence of the road continues. And in that silence, one question always lingers, sharper than any explanation. Are these stories fragments of human imagination, or fragments of something waiting for us in the storm? The storms always return, Clouds gather, winds shift, and the first drops strike the glass with their steady rhythm. For most, rain is nothing more than weather. But for those who know the road, it is a reminder. Each storm brings back the memory of headlights vanishing into darkness, of cars found abandoned with their doors unlocked, of voices that should not exist echoing through static. Each storm reopens the silence that never healed. The road stands unchanged. Asphalt stretches in both directions, bordered by trees that press closer each year, their branches bending low as though trying to conceal what lies beneath them. Signs lean, paint fades, white lines blur under endless water. To the eye, it is only a road, but for those who have driven it at night under heavy rain, it is something else entirely. It is a passage that no one crosses without carrying the weight of unease. What haunts most is not only what has been seen, but what remains unanswered. Why do figures appear where no one should stand? Why do voices slip into radios, low and deliberate, speaking names that the living carry with them long after the storm ends? Why do some drivers return trembling while others vanish altogether, leaving only belongings and silence behind? These questions endure across decades, unchanged, as if the road itself refuses to allow closure. Communities along the highway live with that refusal. They lock their doors when the rain falls heavy. They avoid the road when storms gather. They whisper warnings to travelers, but they know warnings cannot protect. At best, they delay the inevitable. The storms will come again, and with them will come the same cycle. Lights in the rain, figures in the headlights, silence pressing too close. The repetition has become part of life. It is not a mystery to be solved. It is a condition to be endured. The road has shaped generations. Children grow up with fear stitched into them, inheriting the memory of voices they never heard, figures they never saw. They carry the dread as if it were bloodline, a legacy passed not by choice but by place. Families who lost loved ones remain incomplete, unable to move forward because the manner of disappearance was not natural. Grief is heavy enough when death has a body to bury. It becomes unbearable when there is only rain and absence. Theories and explanations fade quickly in the face of that absence. People stop asking what is real and what is not. They stop debating hallucination against haunting. Instead, they live with the weight of possibility. That is enough to break them. The uncertainty corrodes, leaving cracks that never close. Some become paranoid, convinced the figure waits outside their homes during storms. Some become withdrawn, unable to speak of what they experienced. Others leave altogether, abandoning houses and farms, choosing distance over silence. But even distance fails. The memory follows. The storm is never far enough away. The road's greatest cruelty is its persistence. It does not fade with time. It does not weaken with disbelief. It does not bend beneath explanation. It waits. Each storm renews it. Each disappearance sustains it. Each whisper carried on rain binds another life to its silence. There is no progress, no conclusion, only return. And in that return lies the dread that grows heavier each year. Perhaps the road is more than haunted. Perhaps it is not about spirits or echoes or hallucinations. Perhaps it is something else entirely. Something that uses storms to step close to the living world. Something that thrives in the isolation of rain-soaked nights. Something that does not care for theories or disbelief. Perhaps the road itself is the threshold. A place where the veil thins and what should remain hidden steps into sight. And if that is true, then no amount of warning will protect those who travel it. The truth is this: the road does not need you to believe in it. The storm does not wait for your permission. The figure does not vanish because you close your eyes. These things endure regardless, and they will continue long after every voice that told their stories has gone silent. They do not end. They do not rest. They wait. And so, the haunting question remains, heavy as the storm itself, pressing against every heart that dares to drive that road alone at night. When the rain falls hardest and the world is emptied of every sound but your own breath, are you truly alone? The answer has never come. The road does not speak. The storm does not explain. It only takes.